Hello. Today we have someone coming to us from Howard Beach, the infamous Howard Beach, New York. Welcome, Adam. We're so happy you're
Hi.
here.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks for having me.
Hi,
I'm
Thanks for
Adam.
excited
being
to be
here.
here.
Yeah, and before we got on, you were telling us about AMS that you're involved in before you tell your story. What is AMS for adoptees so they can find you?
AMS is the Adoptee Mentoring Society. So it's basically a place where adoptees can connect from all over the country to receive mentoring services. They offer one-on-one services, group services, and also public forums for non-adoptees also. So if you happen to be going through something as myself or as most adoptees usually do and want to give some insight to friends or family, it's a great resource for that also.
That's
Look what I
awesome.
have here. A pen from Adoptees Mentoring.
Me
Yeah.
too. I have plenty of those.
And and we're reading Angela Tucker. She's part of that, right? So
Yes. Yep. Angela Tucker. When my experience first started coming to the forefront about a year and a half ago, I had reached out to her, and she had told me about AMS and a little bit about her documentary, which was about her reunion story. And I was mainly just seeking understanding, just from somebody that has been through it, and she's been extremely supportive ever since. And as we got to talking, and as I attended adoptee lounges myself and got to know the people involved, I recently was taken on as an ambassador. I actually did
hey,
express interest, and so that's an exciting new endeavor that
it
I've been doing with
is.
them.
It's
That's so
awesome.
great. Well, we're excited to hear your story. Start
Yeah.
wherever you want. Where were you born? The whole nine
Sure.
yards.
I was born in Jalisco, Mexico, in a small town called Huentitán el Alto. Um, and I was adopted. Uh, Basically, I was a few weeks. I was a few weeks old. My parents, who are New Yorkers, born and raised, they had adopted a child before me, another son, and they were actually planning on adopting a girl next, and they were going to name the girl Amy. On the flight down to Mexico, or actually maybe right before they left, the independent lawyer, which they were going through for the adoption, told them that the girl had passed away. I'm not
Mm.
sure how. It was like a sudden, maybe like an infant sudden death syndrome. Um, Hence, they changed the name Amy to Adam. My mother was just so distraught. She said, just give us the next baby, which was me. And they went down and got me and then brought me back to Queens.
How did they come to adopt you from Mexico?
They had friends. My mother was trying, I guess, back in the day with in vitro and things like that, but nothing was successful. So they had a close friend who adopted a son from the same area and had used this lawyer. It wasn't through an agency. I guess it was like an independent lawyer. And they had gotten his name, and that's how they started their journey. First with my brother, who's older, and then, like I was just telling you, then with me.
And what
Um,
year was this?
this was 1981.
Okay.
I wondered, I just had a conversation with my ex-sister-in-law in Mexico City where she said there's all these lawyers coming out from the 80s.
Mm.
You're starting to find them in Mexico that were doing these brokering of babies. Like she just told me a story that broke in Mexico City.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was more common than I knew. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
since a year and a half ago, I've been kind of learning all of these things, um, which I guess I'll get into. I was contacted by Birth Family a year and a half ago via 23andMe. And so I've been learning more about that time. I do have one of my half sisters was telling me that it was not uncommon for this to happen through these lawyers
Yeah.
a lot,
Right.
especially in that year, those years.
Was
Yeah.
it an American lawyer?
No,
No.
he was Mexican.
That's what there's some story coming out that I gotta find it. Anyway, go
Yeah,
on. That's
please.
interesting.
I'd love to read more about it.
Yeah.
So they had brought me back, and I was raised for the first half of my childhood in Queens, New York. It was a happy upbringing. My family is all American, Jewish, and great parents. Although I did always have an odd feeling, even call it bizarre. So even since I was a young age, I kind of felt a little bit of like what's going on, with me sense.
Did they tell you I mean, they would have had to, right? Tell you you were adopted?
In this case, yeah, they had to because I clearly didn't look
Right.
like any of them. And my brother, mind you, looks, I guess, as if you could imagine, the more Mexican prototype. He
Mm.
looks very
Mm-hmm.
Mexican. For me, I've always gotten odd things. I've gotten Malaysian ones and
Right.
different. Yeah. So they did tell me they were very good about it. I think I was probably maybe 4 or 5. I did differ from my older brother in that even at that young age, I was asking questions, mommy, why don't I look like you? Why don't I look like daddy? Or Robert, who is my brother. So they introduced the theme of adoption through children's books to me and,
Mm-hmm.
child conversation. And they tried the best, they really did the best that they could to give it attention. So for that, I appreciate definitely. It didn't mitigate any of the feeling that I had, and which developed more while I was
Yeah.
growing up, um, especially in elementary schools. I remember even projects as young as like first grade where you would bring in photos and all the kids would say, oh, I look like mommy, or I look like daddy, and I look like my brother. And I never brought in a photo, but I would go along with the story and I would
Mm.
say, oh, I look just like them. And I
Oh.
look just like my brother. And then I would tell my mother this when I came home, and that usually prompted more of a conversation.
Were they pretty
Was
open later, like throughout your, if you wanted to search, or was it just more open about
It
adoption?
it was more of just giving me as much information as they could. I don't think they were ever open to me actually pursuing a
Mm.
search. And as I got older, I did feel like the conversations got a little bit more stunted with the more complex questions that I was asking. And it did get a little bit more difficult. I think a lot of adoptees experience that, which ultimately did cause friction, and just added more to what I was going through
you mean kind of
internally.
a distance between you and your parents as a kind of as a result of
A
this? Did you have an
distance,
right? Did you have an like there was sort of a message of this is this is your family and end of story kind of thing?
absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more of like a declaration when they would tell me what I was. And again, they were great. I know they tried, but they would say certain things like, you are this, you're American, you are Jewish, and you're going to go to Hebrew school and do all these things, which I love languages. So for me, the language part of it, it's still to this day, I love just learning
Mm-hmm.
about different languages. But it was like that. You are this, and this is what we do. And I just kind of, due to that, I just kind of started to keep things inside
Yeah. Well,
and
Hmm.
and
did
and
you
bottled up.
Did you
Did
and
you
your
and your,
brother? Yeah, that's what I
I
was
was
gonna
just
say.
gonna
Did you
ask
and your brother
that.
talk about that? Like talk about being adopted together or just kind of non-discussion?
It's so it's so interesting now in this point of my life because I kind of make a comparison out of compassion because to be honest, I haven't spoken to him in
Mm.
several years. The first time I'll be seeing him will be at Thanksgiving of
Oh.
this year. And I believe what prompted that was me finally telling my parents last summer that I was located by birth family and I wasn't I didn't tell them for a while. But if I'm seriously going to plan a trip down there, I felt as if, I wanted to be honest with them. And I think after that, my mother had expressed to me she would just be so happy if she could have both of her sons in for Thanksgiving. And although she won't say it, since I've told her what occurred, I noticed these little things. So I'll be
Mm.
talking to him around Thanksgiving, but we were very different in that, like I was saying before, I was always very curious and I would ask questions. My brother did not. He definitely throughout his life just kind of went into a
Mm.
deeper hole, to be
Yeah.
honest. And the result was, becoming a recluse, moving
Mm.
away. He lives very far, and we don't talk anymore. I
Yeah.
can remember growing up, and there was a short period of time where he was very protective of me, and but it was short lived, and I really did enjoy it when that was there, but it was very short lived. So
Yeah.
who knows? I'm open, to having conversations. He actually does not know what I've been going through.
Oh.
Yeah, he doesn't know because we don't talk. And I had asked my mother to respectfully not tell him, just because of difference of
Uh-oh.
opinions and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and things like that. So I haven't spoken to him about it, but I would, depending on how the conversation goes. We could see,
Yeah.
you know.
I like that you said compassion. You have to, who knows what's dark down in his heart, right? With what's suppressing.
Well, it's. I mean, I'm sure you girls know it's not easy, and
No.
there's a lot of things that you could just call messed up.
Yeah.
So I get it, which is part of one of the reasons why AMS is just so great because sometimes you need just somebody to get it without having to explain where it's coming from all the time.
Right.
Because despite therapy, despite my close friends and partner, you can't expect somebody to fully understand it. Just hope that they're open and receptive and listen. But
Yeah.
anytime I've ever met an adoptee, it's almost like instantaneous,
Right.
oh, I get you. And then we take it from there, the conversation.
It's
Definitely.
interesting because I have a younger adopted brother and we butt heads
Mm.
a lot growing up. And he kind of is a bit reclusive as well and just doesn't show up for family things that often. But when you think about it, you're just having all these genetic strangers living in a house and expecting everyone to kind of meld in, and it doesn't always work. I'm curious, so you didn't do the seeking, your family sought you.
My family sought me out. Well, this is how it happened. Right before, or maybe it was during COVID. My partner, Anthony, has a good friend that he grew up with whose mother was adopted. And she had done 23andMe just out of her own curiosity to see what she could find as far as her relatives or, just more about her history. And she kept pushing me to do it. Now, at this point, I had completely just really tried to put it behind me because, it had gotten to a point where it was weighing on me physically, emotionally, mentally. And it was like grieving a death. And I had really been stern in my conviction that I was going to put it behind me, and I probably was never going to find anybody, and just trying to be okay with that. But she talked me into it, and I did do it, which obviously now, today, I'm happy that I did. I didn't expect anything. It sat there for quite a bit. And in 2023 was when somebody reached out to me. His name was Gus, and he said, I think I'm your cousin. And it was fairly quick how the dots were connected because of his mother's history with my birth mother. She had already known the story and told me the details, which I later, it later matched when I spoke to my birth mother. So that part happened fairly quick. And she had reached out to my birth mom, who still lives in Mexico, with my half siblings, and told her. And then we had started speaking from there after a few months. It's like it was very surreal. I mean, obviously, it was very surreal. Something you never thought was going to happen.
No.
So I actually kept putting it off, talking to them, maybe out of nerves. And then when I finally did, there was a relief, because honestly, I felt comfortable, right away. So that was a good thing. And then here I am today.
What had your adoptive parents told you? What was your story that you got?
So the story, which we discussed over the summer, and it was funny because it didn't match up with what I heard from my birth family. My parents told me that my birth mother was a medical student. She was not, and that she had put me up for adoption because of her studies, and she was focusing on her studies. None of that was accurate when I finally spoke to
It
her.
never is. Hilarious.
So
it was
common.
Yeah, it was way off. But, I guess back then they told these parents kind of what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
There's money involved in it. They're getting paid. We would joke about growing up. Oh, Adam, you cost more than your brother, because my brother was adopted years earlier. I guess it was a little cheaper. But that was like that was one of the jokes that would go around in the house. And I guess I looked at it like, oh, okay, they're trying to make me feel better, I guess, although it didn't really. But
no,
I was taking that as that was the intent. But yeah, like I said, the information didn't match up.
what were the circumstances of your mother's relinquishment? I'm guessing I'll go ahead. I'm curious.
So my birth mother's name is Maria. And I always had her name because I have the adoption certificate. I'm not sure what adoption papers would look like through an agency, but what I have is literally just one page, and she signed her name. So I always knew her name. And when I first was speaking to the cousin from 23andMe, and then his mother, who's my birth mother's cousin, she right off the bat told me, she said, Adam, I'll tell you the details, but it's very sad. And I said, that's okay. I would assume that, and it's not like always a happy thing, these things. So she had told me that my birth mother and my birth father was a soldier, and he was stationed in Mexico at a place called La Barranca. And that's where my birth mother worked. So she went on to tell me that, I guess they fell in love. It was very tumultuous, and but they did end up getting married. Although, it was a vicious cycle of them having problems. And then she told me that he left. She didn't go into the specific detail, but when he left, back to La Baja, California, which I recently found out is not a part of the United States. It's
No,
still
it's
a
not.
part of Mexico.
Right.
He left and he didn't even know that she was pregnant with me. Then he had come back, and this was after the fact. So she didn't think she would really see him again. And when he came back, she told him. And I tried to fish for information about him. And what I got from her is that she told him about me. She put me up for adoption. She was looking for me. And then his response was he didn't believe her, she said, or he didn't want to believe her, which I'm kind of picturing. And maybe that could be, if somebody tells you that, I mean, what else are you supposed to do at that point when I was already gone? So when they had gotten back together is when she conceived with my younger brother, Israel, the one who I originally thought we might have been twins. But the story that she was telling me was that she became pregnant with Israel. She married my birth father. His name is Inocencio. She went back to La Baja, California with him and tried to smooth things out, but it didn't. And then she ended up leaving. After Israel was born, when he was 6 months old, I guess she left for good, came back to Mexico, and my birth father was gone and not even in Israel's life. So from that point on, she never saw him again.
What heartbreak for your mother, really. I mean, just to have this baby that she probably wanted to keep.
Yeah.
Regretting that decision, looking for you. It's like heartbreaking.
Well, the story, which kind of, just even got to me more, but when I tell people this, I literally have pictured it before she even told me. These scenarios have gone through my head. So she had told me that she was approached by this lawyer, Carlos, and the one that my parents went through, and that she had signed initial papers and then she changed her mind. She gave birth to me and told me she hid me in her house. She didn't want them to come and get me. I'm not sure who they came with, I guess authorities or something like that, but she was hiding me in the house. And she describes the scene, which my cousin's mother described the same scene, that she was kicking and screaming and just in hysteria because it was too late, but she still didn't want them to take me. In the end, they took me.
That's what they pray. They pray
that
on
is
people.
criminal. It's criminal.
Yeah, that's how it was. My half sister Daniela, to this day, she tells me it was like trafficking, like the way that
it is.
It is trafficking.
It isn't like trafficking. It is trafficking. Yeah. That is just terrible.
Right. And she told me this, and after speaking to her and getting to know her personality, I could see it even more. She's clearly a strong woman, and was through a lot. And to, further add to the heartache, when we first had that initial video chat, which my half sister set up after my cousin's mother contacted her, she had started crying, and I wasn't really sure why. That's when she brought Israel up, because she said it was like talking to Israel, who passed away. And Israel is my only full brother. We both share our father also.
I'm so sorry. How old was Israel when he passed away?
Thank you. He was, I believe she said 24, 24, 25.
Oh, gosh.
He was young. I have a whole bunch of photos of him, which is great. At least I have that. And I'm able to do certain things now, like Dia de los Muertos just passed, which is a Mexican holiday in which we celebrate. So I light my candle. I have a picture of him. It was probably one of the strongest chords that struck within me in finding all of this out. And I know even some people will ask me like, oh, well, you never, you never met him. But for some reason, it doesn't change anything. for me. It might have even made it more potent.
Right.
Knowing that I have the opportunity now to meet my half siblings, but with Israel, I won't. One of the things that I'm planning on doing when I finally get to go to Mexico is to ask if, I don't know if it's too forward for me to ask, but I was going to ask if I could have some of his ashes, or if I could have like a shirt or something.
Yeah.
No, I don't
you know,
think that's too forward at all. I think, your poor mother, really, to lose you and then to lose him and then you're similar to him. It must be just
it was,
heartbreaking.
yeah, I could see it on her face when we were talking, and I kind of just wanted her to stop crying,
Yeah.
What caused his death?
So what had happened with Israel was he was developing some mental health struggles towards his late teens, which, and finding this out too also resonated with me because I've had my own in the past, which more and more makes me think if I was there, I would have been able to understand and to have helped him and to have loved him regardless. But so he was developing some issues with that. And then my mother says he started to disappear, at strange hours. And then he would come back at strange hours. And then eventually he went on a trip to visit some of our cousins in California. The rest of our birth family had moved to the States, to California, to start their life. And then my birth mother tells me, Maria, I call her Mama now, and she told me that when he got off the plane, his eyes were very glassy and he just seemed off. So she took him to the doctor and he ended up being diagnosed as schizophrenic. And then after that, he refused to take his medication. I don't know if it made him feel a certain way or he just didn't want to take it, which led him to be put in an assisted living home. While he was there, for just a routine checkup, he would go to the hospital, and on one of his visits to the hospital, they had found that he had contracted tuberculosis, and tuberculosis was what caused his death.
Gosh.
It
So
was
young.
Your poor mother. Oh, I bet she's really glad to have found you.
She was. She is. She is. So I look at that, and I hear other stories, especially now through the mentoring society.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful for that when I do talk to them, her feeling of love and even remorse and regret, which I wish she didn't really have, because I don't want to see her upset, is very genuine to me. And that's been since day one. It was more of her saying, I'm so happy that you're here. And when you're ready, she even said, when you're ready, you can call me Mama, but I'm not going to push you. She was just so overjoyed with the whole thing. And she had wanted me to come down and see her from day one, which, obviously I needed time.
I can't wait for you to go. You have to keep us up to date on that.
Yeah, I definitely will.
When's your and what about, are you going to search for your father?
Yeah.
Or is that sort of on the back burner at the moment?
It's in my head. I think the complexities of him are even more. Something I struggle with is, what if I show up on this guy's doorstep and he just, what am I? I'm like a ghost at this point. He might have, I don't even know if he ever believed I existed. So I struggle with that. And if I would be interrupting, his life, I don't know. But I really, there's a bigger part of me that does want to. And I think it's something that I could revisit after I make the visit to Mexico.
Yeah, that makes sense. Has DNA shown any relatives on his side?
Yes.
Oh, it has.
This is the odd thing with him. So with Gus, with Mike, who's technically my second cousin. So his mother's, that's why his mother is my birth mother's first cousin. I'm learning more about these terms as I go.
Right.
But our percentage of DNA was close to, I think it was a 3 point something. And I have people on there with 7%
Whoa.
that have the surnames of my birth father. So it's no mystery to me.
No one's reached out. No one's reached out.
No, I have, and I've gotten some interesting responses. One of them was like, "Oh, I don't know anything," or this and that. One of them actually told me she was an orphan herself, and I'm not sure if she was just saying that because then I was like, well, then how do you have the same last name as my birth father? I guess were you left with this name, or I don't know. There's a lot of things that didn't connect, but there's definitely people on there that I could continue to reach out to. I'm not sure if I'll get the response, but it's there. It's there. So like I said, I definitely will revisit it after.
I have the same thing. They sit in my inbox. I have a bunch of on my father's side that sit in my inbox, and then 2 of them just shut me down. You know what I mean? They like blocked me.
I don't. And part of it was my resistance towards him was I was asking myself, where was he during Israel's life? I know Maria left with Israel, but he knew about Israel. So part of me was like, what did you check in to see how he was doing? Did you do anything? And from what I asked, Maria and my half siblings say they've never met him and they've never heard of him. They know his name. That she doesn't have a picture. I did want to kind of see a picture, but all she says is that when I do go down there, we would talk more. So I'm not sure if maybe she'll give me more information at that point.
Probably, yeah.
That's what I was.
Time.
Yeah,
I'm really excited for you to go on this trip, and I can't wait to hear what happens. And so your adoptive family, so you've told them, and how are they handling that?
Well, I told them last July after meeting somebody through AMS, and I kept putting it off. I said, okay, maybe I'm going to do it next month. Michelle, her name's Michelle. And she goes, Adam, what's the difference if you do it next month or next week? And I said, honestly, I don't know. So then I had called my parents right after, and I said, I want to come over and have a discussion with you. Of course, they jumped right away to, Adam, are you dying or are you moving away? Have you, split with your partner? I said, no, it's nothing with that. It just is a conversation I want to have in person with you. And I had thought, well, no, it went well. It went well in the moment. And, I think I heard words of support, but now, several months later, I'm not sure if we're on the same page. I think maybe in the moment, what were they supposed to say? Other than, okay, Adam, we're going to support you. But now it's more like they don't really want me to talk about it anymore, which I accept.
Okay. I would just always think it's, well, some adoptive parents just aren't open to being educated about adoptees and feelings and all that stuff. So I think, I understand just having to let it be what it is, right?
It can take time. It can take time too. Like maybe like give them some literature. My mom and I didn't talk about it for years, and then right before she started to end her life, my adopted mom, she got more open. I mean, as you get older and you start looking at things or listening to things or thinking of your own life, right? So maybe
I'm hoping.
Education.
Yeah, because in the moment she was even asking questions about if she could see photos. She wanted to see a photo of my birth mother and my half siblings, whereas my father did not. So I kind of, I don't want to say they tricked me, but I really was like, wow, this is amazing. They're actually interested. And I prefaced the conversation because sometimes it's a one-sided conversation
Right.
with this, or just in general. And I just basically said to both of them, just let me get everything out, please, and just let me talk first, because it was stuff that I was just, keeping in, and and this is, I'll mention this. And then what had happened was my father said, Adam, I wished you would have spoken to us, growing up, about these things that you were feeling inside. And I didn't say it, but I have, there's many times that I've tried to bring it up. There was a point in my life where it was clear that I was struggling, as it did lead to issues like addiction, and things like that. So it was apparent, and I had tried to bring it up, but if they were saying that I didn't, it was okay. It wasn't a conversation to go back and forth. I was fine if that's what they want to think. So
They have their own guilt. They have their own guilt. Like people have
Yeah.
like you start wondering, was I there? Was I listening? I'm sure they have. Everybody's layered, right?
Yeah. And maybe they weren't listening, or maybe they just didn't, it's a tough
Denial.
conversation.
Yeah,
Denial. Yeah.
Denial.
I remember one time I was a child, and I had written a song I loved to write, even as a kid. And it was about my birth mother. And I asked my mom if I could sing it to her. So I don't know why I always go back to this moment. And this is part of my guilt, because I always think, Adam, why did you do that? Because
Oh,
what would my mom, what was she thinking, in that moment, when all I'm doing is writing about this mother that I don't know? But it was a daily, constant train of thought, and even to this day,
Right.
it's
which
always.
had there been counseling in place
Exactly.
for the adoptive parents to understand that their child's going to go through feelings, and that's not really a responsibility you should have been
No.
shouldering on your own, to feel guilty about singing a song about somebody that you of course naturally would wonder about and long for.
Yeah, I
That's right.
agree. They needed resources, and back then it was even more so a one-sided narrative.
Mhm.
As for me, my mother did go to therapy, and she suggested that I go, which I did. I didn't really think it was that effective. I also went to support groups. I would look them up. There was a couple at the local church, adoption support groups. But when I had went, it was all parents. It was all adoptive parents. And when I was trying to voice my opinion, you could imagine what the
Yes.
response was.
Mm.
Sure.
And then I finally got up in one, and I remember this too. You saw these certain moments stick out to me, and it was a conversation, much like Angela Tucker's book, saying, with these parents saying that they are doing such a great thing, which they are, but that their kids should be grateful. And I had
Right.
said in the group, I said, well, actually, I'm a little upset. That's what I said. I said, I'm a little, and sometimes I'm a little angry. And sometimes I get, sad. And I remember them all just looking at me. And then I had said at this, I think I was 18 at this point. I was okay voicing my opinion. I said, you know what, I'm just going to go. And I got up and I just left, and that was it. I didn't seek out
Wow.
It's
anymore.
such a bubble, right? When everyone's reflecting back their own, oh, we're this, but listen to the children. This is why education is so important. What you're doing, the podcast. Maybe parents that do hear this now go, okay, when my son is singing a song about his mother that he's missing, you say, oh, that's beautiful, and let's talk about her. Like that's how it should be approached, right? But instead, it's, oh, that's scary, and
Yeah. Or they don't even know, but like it goes back to resources, like you were
Yep, it
saying.
does.
They weren't equipped,
No.
to with a response to that. And it can lead to troublesome places. And
Yeah.
in my case it did
Mhm.
for
Same.
years.
Me
Yeah.
too.
It did. When I was younger, I would never let my mother leave. It was becoming a problem, like in school. Um, and as I got older, this would happen with friends and relationships, to the point where, and me coming out as being gay in my later teen years, I even talked to other people. That was the easiest thing for me to do. There was no, I because compared to what else I was feeling, that was subsequent. It wasn't. It just didn't affect me as much.
That says
But
a lot about
yeah,
being adopted.
Mhm.
yeah, right. It
Yeah.
does. But to the point where I did not date, always the best people. And I was in one extremely abusive relationship, which ended me up in the hospital. It was, very close to, life and death situation. But to that day too, I remember, I had police coming in the hospital room asking me what happened, who did it, and I wouldn't say for fear that I wouldn't have that person anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
Mm.
and you don't notice it, when you're in it.
No, you
Right.
don't.
You don't notice it. You could listen. I had some friends say, Adam, I don't want to sit and watch you, get hurt, anymore. Eventually, obviously, I had I had overcome this, but it was a big thing for me to let go
Of
uh,
course.
of anyone. Um, Also, there was the issue of identity crisis, which I think for transnational adoptees, it sometimes, well, in my case, it led to like severe complications. Like with when I looked in the mirror, I would
Right.
look in the mirror and say, I don't feel like this name. I just and it made me feel almost like wretched, is how I could explain it. Um, and I ended up changing my name. I had my adoption papers, and I went to court. You had to publish an obituary of the name that you were. Um, and I changed my name after that was published to keep my birth surnames and to keep Adam. So I could be both.
Mm.
Um,
I
there
like
was
that.
That.
also,
Yes.
yeah, I had done that, but my parents didn't understand, obviously, at first. And I'm sure, I even told them, I can see in hindsight how you could have taken it as a slap in the face. It's your family name. But this was genuinely the reason why I did it. It wasn't spite. It was so I could wake up and look in the mirror and feel a little bit more like
Yeah.
I fit.
The
That's so
taking back
brave,
of
Adam.
yourself.
It's really brave that you did that. It's hard to do that. I understand.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then as I was growing up, I did do some modeling and some acting and some things like that. But I succumbed to the all American prototype, and I ended up having plastic surgery on my nose to just look more American. Because I felt like it was a little bit too ethnic. So here I was trying to fit into a name that represented both, but then trying to look like
Yeah.
the norm. And it was disastrous, like
Yeah.
in many ways.
The great chameleons, right? I mean, adoptees are the great. How do we fit? How are you fitting your environment constantly?
That's
Mm.
what we do.
Yeah.
We play the part growing up, to what anybody expects us to be.
Yeah.
And I never really fully admitted that until being found by Gus, and I've been kind of confronting all of these things
Yes.
from my earlier life. But I can say now, yes, that's what I was doing.
Wow. Adam, thank you so much for sharing
Oh
all this
no,
and your
it's
vulnerability and honesty. Really, really
touching.
appreciate it and love talking to you.
You're doing
You're
the
welcome.
good work, and you're helping others. Like just the fact that you're in this group with the right people, with Angela Tucker and her group, you're gonna really help others. I mean, that's the I mean, hearing your story, I'm thinking how many people are out there that can't tell their story and they're so confused. And So thank
When
you.
you're welcome. And when I found these people, you know, everything happens for a reason, right?
Mhm.
And when I did find Angela and started meeting all of these people throughout AMS, and I said, like, this is happening to me now, and knowing, you know, that what we all go through,
Yeah.
I almost felt like I have to, you know, share to help whoever might be, you know, going through it, because it is a blind maze. You know, it's walking through a dark forest, and if I see a way out, you know, why not help the person next to you and say, try going that way, and maybe you get out of it, because it is a constant walking into
Oh,
trees, and
That, that
that's
is
just I felt.
beautiful and a positive way to end. I really thank you for saying that and thank you for sharing. And please keep us
please.
posted on what happens and how it
Pictures.
goes.
I definitely will. Definitely will. Thanks for having me.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Adam.
much, Adam. Thank you.
Have a